Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing a film called KRISHA. This film was directed by Trey Edward Shults. He also wrote the film and he stars in it as himself, and it's all pretty amazing to comprehend because this guy is only 28 years old. This is his first feature film and it came out a while ago, and unfortunately I didn't get around to seeing it until now. I just rented it on a whim and I am so glad I did because this film really grabbed my attention. It's something that I will remember for quite a while. I'm not going to say it's the best film of the year because I don't like to make, definitive statements like that typically, but I will say that just in terms of the films I've seen this year, this one really resonated with me on a very visceral level and certainly on a very personal level. And I think that's because this is a very personal work for Shults, the director. As I said before, he plays himself in the film, and it is semi-autobiographical, not completely, but it is kind of drawing from a specific event that happened in his life. The character of KRISHA is also played by his aunt, whose name is KRISHA as well, and many of his own family members star in the film. The film is about the character named KRISHA, and she is this middle-aged woman. We don't really know anything about her other than the fact that she is coming back to see her family for Thanksgiving. And judging by the reactions of her family members and how she kind of conducts herself in a very kind of anxious, awkward sort of way, she obviously hasn't been around her family in quite a long time. And we don't know much about KRISHA in terms of her background, as I said, but all of these things are kind of hinted at in terms of mannerisms and just in the way that she looks. She has a missing finger, or part of her finger is missing, and that's never really explained in the movie, and just little things here and there, little things hinted at in the dialogue. We know that she takes a lot of pills. She's very nervous, very in her head. Even the very first shot of the film is just this slow zoom into her face, and you can just see this kind of manic, this very vulnerable person who just looks like they're about to snap. So even though we may not know much about her character, we sense a lot brewing beneath the surface. It is in the first shot, but it's also conveyed throughout the film especially in terms of the cinematography. Very visceral, very fluid cinematography, and it's also accompanied by this wonderful, very atonal score. Despite the fact that the film has a very small budget, it feels so epic. It feels really lush, really cinematic, and it feels like paranoia being played out through this slow tension and this inevitable building chaos. And there are times where I feel like the film becomes a little bit too heavy-handed or a little bit too flourishy in terms of the visual language, and that's just a sign of, again, just somebody being very young and this being his first film. That's something that he will learn, but I'm telling you, Shults, this is a guy, you're gonna remember this guy's name. He is a true talent, and he's just got a very definitive style. People have drawn comparisons to Cassavetes in terms of his work, especially a lot of the improvisational feel that the film has, but also I think there's a big Terrence Malick influence, which is quite fitting because he actually interned when he was, I think 19, he said. He interned on a couple of Terrence Malick projects, which also included The Tree of Life. There's just this rhythm and this pulsating, very captivating energy that just draws you in from the very first shot. And it also has a very unsettling feel, and it becomes more like that as the film goes on. Me watching the first 20 minutes of the movie, and you see kind of how KRISHA feels, how she feels so out of place in this family that doesn't understand her, she doesn't understand them. It's a lot like just what it feels like being somebody who just doesn't feel like they fit in. Very introverted, kind of an alienated feel. That feeling of being this lonely spectator that will never be accepted no matter what has a very palpable sort of feel, and it becomes more, as I said, more painfully poignant as the film kind of progresses. And the thing is, even though this film takes place all in one location, you might think, well, that could be a play. And really, I don't think this film at all would work as a play because so much of it depends on the visual language and just how the camera is interpreting certain events. And he uses a lot of kind of experimental tricks that I don't think you could get away with at all on stage. It's all in the details. Nothing is really in sequence here. There's a lot of montages with little interjected scenes or portions of scenes scattered throughout, but you don't know exactly when those scenes are taking place because they're just kind of sporadic, you know, little pieces here and there all sprinkled throughout. It doesn't really have a beginning and end. Everything is just really out of sequence. And I think the purpose of that is to make us feel slightly off, like everything is slightly fragmented, and that surrealistic feeling just kind of helps us really seep into the mind of KRISHA in a sense. And I feel like it needs to be disorienting in order to capture that mental disarray. And I know I'm talking a lot about style here, and especially for somebody that's a cinephile like me, this is a cinephile's wet dream in a sense. But when I was watching the film kind of towards the middle, I kind of started to worry that it might be a little bit hollow and that there wasn't enough meat to the actual story in order to carry all of this visual splendor that we're seeing. But you know, I felt kind of more relieved, especially in the third act of the film. Once we start to get to that point, the emotional impact of the characters and the dimension of the characters starts to really fill in with all of that technical prowess. And a lot of that is because in the first two acts of the film, all we can really empathize with is KRISHA as a character, because it's her story that we're following. And everybody else just seems kind of like these hollow, not caricatures, but just these hollow people that she just has a real disconnect from. But in the end, we do see that sort of shift where we're able to see other characters and how they also have been affected by this woman's actions. And we start to understand their point of view as well. No one is truly victimized. Everyone has their reasons for why they're reacting the way they're reacting. And everyone has baggage. And then the film becomes even more disorienting to the point that at the end, not going to give anything away specifically, but I'll just say that there are a lot of the closing scenes are played out twice. They're filmed in two ways. One in a more kind of emotional, very sensitive, quiet, calmer sort of way. And then it's shot again in a very violent, very aggressive way where basically shit is hitting the fan all over the place. You're not really sure which version of the scene to trust, what is real and what is all perceived in KRISHA's mind. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the scene in Persona, the 1960s Bergman film, where, you know, they shoot a scene two ways. Now that's a little bit different. It's the same scene, just shot from two different points of view. And it makes sense in this film in a different way because we as an audience don't really know what to trust, and maybe that's the point. There is no side that you should really be on. And when the film ends, it ends in this very, very, very dark place, and that is ultimately where all of the pathos kind of emanates from. And that's where I really started to feel that emotional gut punch, where the film started to really kind of branch out and become more complex, because there is just this great sense of longing and loneliness, certainly, but there's a humanness that starts to take shape. You can see that the idea of family is very, very important to Shults as a man. You see from his point of view, but through the character's eyes, KRISHA, you see what it means to him, how important it is to be loved, and even if that might be a tall order depending on the circumstances. That loneliness and that slow chaos building and that slow kind of abandonment is just, it's heartbreaking to watch, and it feels like visual depression just being depicted on film. This film just affected me really deeply, and I was left speechless by the end of it. And I know that I said that Shults, you know, there are a few things here and there, just minor things that felt a little heavy-handed or maybe slightly rudimentary, but all of that will come with experience, and he'll learn that certainly. But what he does have on a basic level in terms of just raw talent, he has a very keen eye, a real keen sense of, he knows humanistic detail, and that's matched with this kind of cinematic eye. And that's a great combination. And I cannot wait to see what he comes up with next. His next film is going to be a horror film, apparently, and that sounds perfect, because this film in a lot of ways did feel like a horror film. So yes, I get really excited when I see young talent. So if you haven't seen this film, and I'm assuming a lot of you haven't because it's a very, very small film, please watch it. You can download it on Amazon, you can get it on iTunes, YouTube. I want to get the word out about this movie. And that is my review. Thank you all for listening. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and you can also like my Facebook page and the link below that one. Catch you next time.